Year 2 at Little Ealing. It's really, really lovely to be here. It's a little bit smaller and a little bit brighter, but I'm hoping to take you on a journey of discovery of all the amazing animals that are on your doorstep. Now, all of these animals are from Ealing. They are filmed, or we have taken pictures of them in Ealing. And we're going to kick off with the most amazing place for wildlife. Now, I know you can't see it very well, but what do you think that is there? Does it look, can you see some water? I like hands going up, thank you. What do you think it is?
A stream.
It looks like a stream, doesn't it? It's actually the canal, okay? And the canal is a lovely place because it's where wildlife is safe. Do you think there are cars on the canal? No. So wildlife gets to float along the canal or walk along the grass verges, which you can't quite see, and it's safe. So we call it a wildlife corridor. And what I would really love is for, at the end of this talk, for you to go home to your mums and your dads and everybody who's watching this as well and say, Mum, Dad, let's try and make a wildlife corridor. Your teachers will also be giving you a handout which gives you lots of ideas about how you can help wildlife in Ealing. So have a read of that. Okay, so a few people recognise this bird, I think. What do you think this is? I know you can't see it because it's a bit bright. What is it?
Swan.
It's a swan. There are 2 swans there, and swans often mate for life. One pair, they stay together. I was walking along the canal in February last year, and it was really cold. This is ice, okay? And one of the swans was in the water here, and the other swan was slipping and sliding on the ice back there. Now, it's not thick ice. In this country, we never have thick ice, so we never want to walk on the ice, okay, ourselves. But the birds, they're not very heavy, so they could do it. Anyway, they were reunited, and then they made this lovely shape, and somebody said it was a heart. And do you know what day it was that I was walking along the canal? It was Valentine's Day.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the day that we celebrate all things to do with love. So I was very, very proud to have seen those swans. And I cycled along that canal today to go to a school in Southall, and I saw a whole family of swans. So I would like you to go for a walk. Who has been for a walk along the canal?
Me.
Excellent. So anybody that hasn't, when you get home, say to Mum and Dad, maybe before Christmas, can we just go for a walk along the canal? And why is it important to go for a walk along the canal? So what is this? It's a map. What do you think it's a map of? Yes, Oscar? Ealing, exactly. Now, we talked about the canal. Ealing is so lucky. Can you see the canal? Look, can you see a little bit of blue, blue wiggle all the way along here, and then it goes up here, and then it goes all the way over that. That means that 3 sides of Ealing Borough, where we live, is surrounded by canal. How lucky the wildlife is. They have wildlife corridors, and we have amazing canals and walkways all the way over around 3 boroughs. Let's talk about something else. What's crisscrossing our borough? Can you see these lines? These black lines that look like a ladder. What do you think they are? If you want to take public transport, if you don't want to drive, because you don't want to put pollution into the air, if you want to take public transport, what might you go on? A train, exactly. So these are train tracks. Can you see all the train tracks? Yeah? Train tracks all over. Now, if an animal is walking on a train track, will it get killed? Yes. But next to the train track are all these amazing places, overgrown brambles and scrubland and trees. So wildlife is safe. So train tracks are also wildlife corridors. Okay, but where do you come in? What can we see? What can you see? The splodges. Can you see some colourful splodges? What are the colourful splodges? Yeah. Greenery. What greenery do you think? Parks. So we're lucky in Ealing, we've got loads of lovely parks. But if you're a hedgehog and you want to get from Horsenden Hill in the north of our borough, the top of our borough, and you want to get all the way down to Walpole Park here, which is near us now, and where I sometimes work, do you think that hedgehog is safe?
No.
Because he's going to have to go through all the white bits. And what are the white bits? What are the white bits? Someone who hasn't said anything. Yes. The cities, the houses, exactly, the pavements, the roads. And they need your front gardens. Because if that hedgehog is walking along the road, if it can see a bush or a plant or a tree or some flowers or some grass in a front garden, it can be safe there for a bit. It can find some insects to eat and then it can carry on. And maybe it will get down to Walpole Park. Now, this is the borough with all of your schools in it. We don't need to talk about that. We're going to start off, and I hope you can see it despite the light, with the biggest animal probably in our borough. Let's see if it works. Yes, it works. They're badgers.
Badgers?
So we have 3 badger families in Ealing. They're kept in secret places. We don't tell people where they are because we don't want anyone to injure them or scare them. They're quite strong badgers. They come out at night. This is a mummy with her 3 young. Now the young are probably a year old. Okay, she may have tiny little babies down in the badger set underneath, underground. And they like to eat everything. They're omnivores. They eat everything. They like insects especially, though, and worms, things like that. But they will eat anything. And they're quite aggressive. So if you ever see a badger, please leave it alone because it could really, break your wrist if you put your hand anywhere near it. Swans are quite aggressive too, so we do have to give wildlife its space, don't we? We don't invite wildlife into our homes. We let it be wild. So badgers are probably the only predator of another prickly creature. Now I can see loads of hands up, and I love how children want to tell me things, but I have to tell you that I'm doing 2 talks here. So I'm going to ask you to put your hands down except when I ask you a question. And maybe at the end, if I'm super quick with my talk, you can tell me some things and Mr. Jackson can decide who gets to tell me some stuff, okay? I know what you want to tell me is interesting. It's just that I have to move on. So they are the only animal that eats something prickly that I love. What have I already talked about? What animal have I already talked about?
Hedgehogs.
Hedgehogs, exactly. Now hedgehogs love to be in like compost heaps and piles of leaves and somewhere really safe, especially in the winter, because what do they do in the winter? What's the word that they do in the winter? They hibernate. So they have to eat loads and loads and loads of insects and bugs in the summer, and then they have to be a certain weight. They have to be 500, 600 grams, so that's kind of like half a bag of sugar. And if they're too small, they won't survive the winter. So they have to eat loads of bugs. So we have to help them get more bugs. So hedgehogs love to be in compost heaps and in piles that sometimes get burnt, like bonfires. So that's why you have to always make sure there are no hedgehogs in your bonfires or your compost. This is in a compost heap in Osterley. There is Mummy Hedgehog. And can you see the baby hoglets? 1, 2, 3, 4 baby hoglets. They're so cute, aren't they? And this is a hedgehog out at night, and they're called hedgehogs because they look a bit like pigs. And hog is another word for a pig. So they live in hedges, so they're hedgehogs. And don't forget, they're called hoglets. Love that word. Okay, so they're hibernating now. How many of you have seen a hedgehog? In Ealing? No, somewhere else? In Ealing. How many of you have seen a hedgehog in Ealing? Have you, Oscar?
In Walpole Park, I've seen a den of a hedgehog and I've seen a spiked shoe.
So thank you very much. That's very interesting. Hedgehogs are moving. They're on the move, and their numbers seem to be recovering a tiny bit. I haven't seen a hedgehog for 20 years. I've lived in Ealing all my life, more or less, gone away and come back. I saw one when I was 12, so just a little bit older than you. Someone said to me, Tash, there are hedgehogs on our allotment. Now, what is an allotment? It's a garden that the government of Ealing lends to people. So it's a big, big field, and I have a little bit of it. And then my neighbour has a little bit of it. And there's lots of different little gardens, okay? But there are no fences. I have to grow vegetables and flowers and have ponds. And the government of Ealing says, okay, you give us a little bit of money, you can have this garden, right? We're going to let you borrow it. So that is what an allotment is. It's basically a big field full of little gardens with no fences. I set up a camera because somebody told me that they'd seen a hedgehog on our allotment. It's by South Ealing. It's right next to the railway line, so just near you guys. If you walk that way, you walk over the bridge, then that is where the allotments are all round there to the right. And tell me if you think my camera picked up the hedgehog. Can anybody see the hedgehog moving? Can you see it? Down here. little hedgehog. I don't know if it's a male or a female. Somebody who's more of an expert could maybe identify, but I don't think so. The little hedgehog goes under here and it wants to hide under here because this is a bath and people on allotments reuse and recycle everything. So an old bath is a really good pond or somewhere to grow some vegetables or have some water plants. So Mr. Hedgehog or Mrs. Hedgehog went under there. Look at the time. It's 11 o'clock at night. So that's why I'm not standing there waiting for the hedgehog to arrive, because it's cold and dark. But actually, now the hedgehog will be hibernating. Let's hope. And I hope to see one next year. I've been to lots of schools and loads of children have seen hedgehogs. So I'm really pleased. So I'm hoping that I will get to see one next year. All right, what are these? Foxes! Little fox cubs. Often there are 3 or 4 in a family. They're born in the spring, like all animals are born in the spring. And they're very, very sweet and they play around. Sometimes they make messes in gardens and mummies and daddies don't like them so much. Yeah, you had that, yeah. But yeah, fox poo as well. Well, you can pick up the fox poo and put it in the toilet and flush it away. And I would say, if your mums and dads don't like the foxes, just say to them, well, they'll be gone by the end of the summer, mum and dad. Let's just let them play a little bit. And then we can block up holes and we can, make the garden good because they won't hang around during the winter. And actually, we're really lucky to have foxes in Ealing because not all boroughs in London have foxes and not all cities in England have foxes. We have lovely wildlife corridors, which is why we have lots of foxes. And Oscar will recognise this garden because this is...
That's my new house. My new house.
Oscar, sit down now, yeah. It is his new house and there was a family of foxes that were living in the garden because no one else was living in the house. So they were very, very happy there. They were undisturbed. And Oscar's mummy or daddy took a little video. So you're going to get to see these foxes playing. So that's a fox cub. And the fox cub is saying, Mum, Mum, play with me. And then he goes over and it might be Dad, it might be a sibling. He goes, Dad, will you play with me? Dad or brother or sister goes, no, leave me alone. And I hope you can see that the little fox cub goes back to Mummy and she's not cleaning him and he's not cleaning her and he's not playing. Do you know what he's doing? Can you see with your really good eyes, even though there's bright sun? What do you think he's doing? What do you think he's doing?
Begging?
Not begging.
Hibernating.
Not hibernating, no.
Drinking milk.
Drinking milk, that's right. He is drinking milk from his mummy because he's just like human babies. They drink milk from their mummies. Or they drink milk anyway when they're babies, and then they move on to other things, don't we? Now we eat solids, yeah? We eat sandwiches, don't we? So that the fox will do the same thing. It will start to eat cats, rats, and mice, and little birds, and things like that. Now, we're allowed to be vegetarian if we want to be, aren't we?
Yeah.
Your mummy and daddy or you can say, I would like to eat less meat or no meat. But animals, do they have a choice? No, they do what they have evolved to do, what their ancestors did, and they have changed over thousands of years, and this is what they do. So that's what they eat. So we need to help them sometimes to just get food. And one of the main sources of food are insects and bugs. So these are called slow worms. Well done, you've already seen them before. Fantastic. Slow worms, and they eat slugs and snails, so gardeners love them because the slugs and the snails do eat like the vegetables that I grow. Now, they're not worms really, and they're not snakes either, even though they look like them. They are lizards, thank you very much. I know, it's so confusing. Basically, their ancestors had little holes where the legs were. They used to be lizards, they got rid of the legs, so they've still got little holes where the legs were, and now they look like snakes. It's super confusing, but the amazing thing is that they are protected, they are endangered. It is against the law to harm a slow worm. So if you deliberately, on purpose, hurt a slow worm, they can, send you to prison. So it's really important not to harm wildlife. Why? Good question. Because because they're endangered, because the numbers have gone down so much that we're now protecting them. So the government says, okay, we're going to say it's illegal to harm slow worms so that people are really, really careful. It's the same with bats. It's illegal to harm a bat or even to look in a bat box because we want bats to be okay. We want people to say, yes, bats, you can do what you need because bats and slow worms are amazing creatures and their numbers are going down. So we actually have a lot of slow worms on allotments because there are no fences. So they love to be in compost heaps or on the ground underneath. Can you see this here? It's plastic. So they love to be under plastic because plastic gets nice and hot. So in the heat of the summer, they will sit under the plastic, and if you pull back the plastic or you pull back the cardboard or carpets, then you might see a slow worm. So this is a female. She's brown. These are males. Probably a lighter colour, usually grey, and the babies are gold. They're really sweet. Now, I do have a special treat for you. It is a real one. But it is unfortunately dead, but if it was alive, I wouldn't be able to bring it in. So it died of natural causes. It's a male slow worm. It's grey and silvery rather than brown. It's got teeth. It blinks. They have babies every 2 years. They can live up to about 20, 25 years. They can be quite long. So this one died. You can see the tail has been bitten off. Maybe a fox tried to catch it or a rat. They do something very clever, slow worms. They drop their tails when they're scared. Okay? And when they're scared because they're being hunted, predated, they drop their tails on the floor. And then the fox or the rat goes, oh, great, I've caught the slow worm, I'm going to eat it. But in the meantime, the rest of the slow worm disappears off. So the slow worm stays alive and is very, very happy. But it has then a stunted tail. It usually has, it heals, but it doesn't grow back a very long tail. Often you see them with very, slightly shorter tails. This one obviously didn't manage to escape. This one didn't, and it died where it was, and it dried out completely. And somebody gave it to me, and I thought it would be cool to bring it to school so you get to see what it looks like. Is it cool?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, one person is a bit freaked out. But they are very cool, and remember, they're protected. Okay, the slow worm has gone away. Is she still? Hang on a second. Close your eyes if you're still scared, because I just wanted to show you this one. What happened to this one? That got flattened. That got run over, didn't it? So unfortunately, that's what happens to wildlife sometimes when cars or lawnmowers drive over things. They get flattened. So that's why wildlife corridors are so important. Okay, watch out, watch your ears. Sorry, okay, we're all good now. Hopefully that doesn't stop working in a minute. You might have to plug it in. All right, what are these guys? Newts. Well done, they are newts. Somebody knows they're amphibians. Fantastic. So this is the common newt with the yellow tummy and polka dot spots. This is a baby newt that I'm holding. Now, why are they in a bucket? Any ideas? I'm going to tell you why, because I don't think you'll know. Every year, the newts need to go back to their pond to lay their eggs. When they start walking back to the pond to lay their eggs, they fall into the drains. There is a group of conservation helpers, volunteers, that go every year to open up the drains in the roads to scoop up 300 newts this year. 300 newts, save them and take them back to their pond. Isn't that great? Maybe you can do that conservation work one day, and it's lovely that 300 newts were saved, isn't it? Because they're super cool. I mean, frogs are cool too, and toads are as well. Now, what do you think this is, a frog or a toad? It is a toad because it's bumpy. Big difference between frogs and toads. What happens when a car comes towards a frog? What does it do? It jumps. What happens when a car comes towards a toad? Do you know? It freezes. It freezes. And it sprays some yucky tasting chemical onto its back. And the bumpy bits on the back keep that chemical there. And so if you're a fox and you come up to a toad and he sprays that chemical, you go, oh, that is disgusting. I'm not going to eat you. Thanks very much. I'll leave you alone. Do you think the car cares though? No, the car just goes, you're a toad, I'm just going to squash you. Very sad. So our toad numbers have gone right down. So we need to look after our toads and our frogs, especially by putting maybe buckets of water in the ground in our back gardens or our front gardens. Any water helps. And corridors, wildlife corridors are so important, and piles of logs and things like that. Save it, Oscar. So those are the amazing amphibians we've got. But what about these? What would, not the tadpoles, good guess, what would you call it? No, I don't think. Yeah? Just the name? What? No, not a worm. It is a fish. Do you know what fish? It is an eel, I'm sorry. Well done. Try not to call it out, but well done. Excellent. It is an eel. An eel is a fish. And I'm going to tell you something incredible. You have to tell your mums and dads this. The eels, these glass eels, they're called glass eels because they're tiny and they're transparent when they're babies. They are born in the sea near America, in the sea called the Sargasso Sea, near America. And then they make the journey from America across the Atlantic all the way to Europe, and they get to the channel and they think, maybe I'll go up the Thames, maybe I'll go in the canal near in Ealing. I've heard that it's quite cool in the canal in Ealing. They go up the Thames, they go up the canal, they go up to Birmingham or the Midlands. What? Yeah. So they've gone from the salt water to the fresh water of the rivers. Then, after about 10 years, 11 years, they go, I think it's about time now I had some babies. So I'm going to go and lay my eggs. How do you think they do that? They have to get back. They swim back down the River Thames from Birmingham. They swim back down the canal. They try and get all the way back to the Sargasso Sea near America. They lay their eggs and then they die. That is the life cycle, because they're very old by then. A bit like salmon, exactly. So, these little guys are sometimes in our canals, and that's why they're in a bucket, because volunteers have picked them up because they've got caught in a place they can't move from. Like, you know how sometimes canals have like branches that don't go anywhere? So the volunteers go and pick them up and then help them move them along their journey so they can carry on up. And then grow and become 10 years old, 11 years old, and then hopefully they will make it back to the Sargasso Sea. Incredible, isn't it? Okay, we got some cool birds in Ealing as well. So what birds are these? They are owls, right? Exactly. Do you know what owl? Ta-ta-ta. No, it's called, listen carefully, tawny owl, okay? Tawny owl, because there will be a quiz at the end. Tawny owl. That's the mummy tawny owl, and that is the baby tawny owl, called Owlet. This is in Tenterlow Woods in Southall. In Southall, yeah. Southall is, you know, a bit to the side of where you are. Yeah. And another type of owl. Barn owl, very good. That is in Hanwell in Warren Farm. And big owls love to eat mice and rats and birds and frogs and things like that, yeah? But we have a third type of owl in Ealing. Are you ready? We have a third type of owl. This is called the little owl, because it is quite little. And this is the grown-up, and that's actually in Gunnersbury Park. But I've seen the little owl many times in Walpole Park, which is near you guys. And I've shown lots of children and lots of parents the little owls. And they have babies, usually 3, maybe 4. And these 3 little owls are, you know, little. And in order to grow, they won't ever be huge like barn owls or tawny owls, but in order to grow, they need to eat their food. Now, here it is. What is their food? It's not mice, it's not frogs, it's not birds, it is? It's bugs. It's not usually worms, I think. I think it's more like grasshoppers, those kind of things. Bugs that live in tall grass. Which is why you might see in parks, the grass is growing longer. And maybe you think, oh, it's a bit annoying, the grass is so long, I can't kick my football around. But actually, that long grass is where the insects hide. It's where the insects live. We get more insects, we get more little owls. And the only reason we have little owls in Ealing is because we have more insects now. Because Ealing Council has let the grass grow. Because we've got lots of wildflower meadows. Because people are letting the grass grow in their gardens. All of those things will help the bugs. So you've heard me say it's about the food. Okay, this is the bit where you guys can help, and we'll just rush through this one. But this is a pretty important slide because this is a meal I had to make out of insects, and I had to eat it. There is a insect farm in Ealing, and there they grow insects for people to eat. Now, eating insects may be something we have to do a lot more of in the future because we can't eat as much meat as we eat, because meat is not great for the environment. So maybe we can eat a bit less meat and maybe sometimes add more vegetables, and maybe sometimes we can eat a few more insects. But it's quite hard. It is quite hard. But these are cocoa pops, chocolate cocoa pops with mealworms, and those are what birds love to eat as well, mealworms, and they are the babies of beetles, the larvae of beetles, okay, the baby form of beetles. And here, I don't know if you can see it, but maybe Mr. Jackson can show you the presentation afterwards, like on a better screen. These are insects, these are grasshoppers in balsamic vinegar. It is a big grasshopper. I have to say, I didn't love eating those insects, but I'm hoping I can get used to it one day. Now, these are the insects we don't eat. These are the wild insects, like the wasp spider. Isn't that cool? How can you help? How can you help? Well, what can you see here? Wood. Someone just put loads of piles of wood in their front garden. What a good idea. Loads of insects, loads of beetles, hedgehogs can come, frogs and toads can hide. These are a brilliant idea. If you can put a pile of logs anywhere in your garden, front or back, brilliant. If you can have plants in your front garden and not paving slabs, that's even better, because paving slabs stops the rain go through. Then we have a flooding problem in Ealing, and that's happening more and more. So if you've got paving slabs, maybe say to Mum and Dad, shall we pull up 1 or 2 paving slabs and maybe we can plant a bush, plant a tree? Or we can have a pile of logs. These are stones, so at least the rain falls through the stones, so it helps with the flooding problem. This person also added some pots with some plants in, as well as having some bushes. Anything you can do will help. This is my allotment in the winter. It looks really, really, sad in the winter, but it's actually all just sleeping, because insects need to hibernate too. They go and stay somewhere really safe and dry, if they can, over the winter, okay? So I have what we call a dead hedge here. So all the bits of the tree that I had to cut down, because I have to cut down the tree every year, the fruit tree, because otherwise it would get so big that I couldn't reach the top. I just pile them up, and it's just like a hedge. And insects and animals can hide under there over the winter. These are plastic composters where the slow worms all live. So when I take the lid off, there's always hundreds of slow worms at the top, and then they disappear off down the side. And then I've got a crate with loads of other wood, and basically you let the garden go to sleep over the winter. Don't cut everything back. Let the wildflowers be. Let the nettles be. Now, we talked about wildlife corridors, and here's an example of one. So this is near Northfields, near you guys. Do you see these as weeds, or do you see them as wildflowers, which are a nice corridor for a mouse? Thank you. Yeah, do we all agree with that? Yeah. Fantastic. So when you see these kind of paths or areas that are overgrown, just say to your friends or your mums and dads, yeah, we can't cycle through it, but just think of all the wildlife that is in there. If we have more tiny insects, we will have more owls. And who doesn't want more owls?
I do.
Exactly. So we've got a path here that we can walk along. And this is a wildlife corridor for animals. I thought I'd do an experiment. This is my back garden. I mowed a path through my lawn. I thought, let's see what happens if I let the grass grow. It's a really good thing. Loads of people who love wildlife are doing that now. And look what happened. Within a month, I had all these wildflowers all through my garden. It looked so pretty. I had so many insects. The grass had gone to seed, so the birds were coming, and the insects were there because the birds were there because of the insects. So in a very short amount of time, I made it a much nicer place for wildlife. I now haven't had an owl yet, but I have had a heron at the top of the tree.
I've had an owl.
And here is an example of a wildflower meadow in a park. So this is Gunnersbury Park, but if you start looking next spring, or summer, when you're walking through the parks, you might see some areas where there's loads of lovely colourful flowers. And wildflowers are brilliant for pollinators. Pollinators is a big word, but it's basically the way we get fruit and vegetables. So if you don't have lots of buzzing things, flies and dragonflies, save it for me. If you don't have lots of those, then you don't have lots of the food you love to eat. Because who loves apples? Pears, cucumbers, tomatoes. Without pollinators, and I'm not talking about honeybees, I'm talking about all the other insects. Without all of the other insects, we won't have all that fruit and veg. So enjoy the wildflowers. Maybe try throwing some seeds down yourselves. Maybe ask your mums and dads to plant some things in the front garden or to let the grass grow. I hope that I've convinced you that we have amazing wildlife on our doorstep. Have I here too? Yeah? And have I convinced you to maybe do something, one little thing that might help wildlife in Ealing?
Yes.
Good, excellent. That makes me very happy. So this is my son Tom, and he's holding a slow worm there. He's been trained to hold a slow worm since he was 2 years old, so he's very experienced at it, because obviously we would never want to injure a slow worm. And happily we haven't. Okay, Mr. Jackson, that's the end of the formal part of the talk.